The Voice of Prophecy. Bible Course. The Paths of Faith Lesson 10. The Universal Empire. In the prophecies contained in the Holy Scriptures, that of the Colossus with the feet of clay counts among the most remarkable. It is found in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, several predictions of which directly concern our time. A troubled king. In the 6th century BC, an all-powerful monarch by the name of Nebuchadnezzar, or Nebuchadnezzar, reigned in Babylon. This king had a dream which troubled him but which he could not remember. He summoned the magicians, astrologers, and soothsayers of his kingdom urgently and asked them to let him know about the dream and to explain it to him. The sages, or so-called such, dismayed at such a request, were to observe the king that no monarch had ever made such a demand, and that no one was able to reveal such a thing to the king, except the gods whose abode is not among men. Irritated by this response, the king decided to put to death all these impostors who lived at his expense. The sentence was also to strike Daniel and his companions, young Hebrew captives taken from Jerusalem. Daniel obtained a deadline to pray to his God who, he was convinced, would grant his request. Indeed, God heard his prayer and, in a night vision, revealed to him both the dream and its explanation. The next day Daniel appeared before the king to tell him about the dream and to explain it. But he stood aside himself to give glory to the God of heaven, who revealed his secrets to his children. In his turn, the king glorified God. He then gave presents to Daniel, to whom he entrusted the direction of the whole province of Babylon and charged his companions with honors. Question. A. Why was King Nebuchadnezzar disturbed? Question. B. Why could Daniel reveal the dream and explain it? The dream. And what did the king see in a dream? He saw a large statue in the human form. It was immense and of exceptional splendor. The head was of pure gold. The chest and arms were of silver. The belly and thighs were of brass. The legs were of iron, and the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay. While he was looking at the statue, a stone came off without the help of any hand, struck the Colossus' feet and the whole statue was torn to pieces. So, clay, iron, bronze, silver and gold were broken together, and like the chaff which escapes from an area in summer, they were blown away by the wind and no trace of it was found. But the stone became a big mountain and filled the whole earth. Question. Mention the name and the succession of metals. The great lessons of the statue. From the whole of the statue, a few fundamental lessons emerge straight away. The statue represents as a summary, a synthesis of the history of the world from Babylon to the end of the human economy. We observe the earthly monarchy in its successive transformations. Each metal with its characteristics symbolizes one of the universal monarchies, the number of which is therefore limited to 4. C. Contrary to what the partisans of incessant progress think, the march of humanity is descending. Not only is there no evolution, but there is a decline from one century to another. This is indicated by the decreasing value of metals, gold, silver, bronze, iron. D. This perpetual descent must lead to a universal catastrophe, since the statue is pulverized by a small stone. E. The small stone which became a large mountain is the fifth and the last universal empire, of divine essence, based on justice and love. It must replace the terrestrial kingdoms, and last forever. Question. A. What does each metal of the statue represent? Question. B. What indicates that the march of humanity is descending? Babylon, the first universal empire. Now let's go into some details. Daniel himself highlighted the symbolism of the statue. The golden head is Babylon. The Babylonian monarchy inaugurates with Nebuchadnezzar the series of universal monarchies. By its strength, its wealth, its dazzling luxury, it was good compared to those who were to succeed it, what gold is to silver, brass, and iron. Herodotus, Berosus, Diodorus of Sicily, Strabo, and Flavius Josephus described the glory and wealth of Babylon in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. Archaeological finds have generally confirmed their accounts. The last kings of Babylon prepared its fall, which took place under Belshazzar, which was killed in the very night when a mysterious hand had engraved on the wall these three mysterious words, counted, weighed, divided, in reference to the Medo-Persia kingdom. The Babylonian monarchy had lasted 68 years, from 606 to 538 BC. Question. Name the first universal empire and indicate its duration. The Medes and the Persians, the second universal empire. The silver chest and arms symbolize the Medes and the Persians. We know that Cyrus took Babylon with his soldiers by entering it through the dry bed of the Euphrates, whose course had been diverted. The Mede-Persian Empire knew good days under Cyrus, Darius I, Xerxes and Artaxerxes. Lower than Babylon in real value, just as silver is less than gold, less rich and less sumptuous, it was also powerful, more extensive, more resistant, and more durable. He gradually sank into numbness, and his armies, slow and heavy, could not resist the dazzling shock of the legions of Alexander the Great, who tore them to pieces. The Battle of Argos in 331 ended the Mede-Persian hegemony. This monarchy had lasted 207 years, from 538 to 331 BC. Question. Name the second universal empire and indicate its duration. The Greeks, third universal empire. The brazen hips and thighs represent the Greeks. The prophet had said, there will be a third kingdom, which will be of bronze, and will rule over all the earth. This time, it is a monarchy which must rule over the whole earth, which distinguishes it from the two previous ones. The Greco-Macedonian monarchy responds point by point to the terms of the prophecy. Alexander the Great, the greatest and most brilliant captain and organizer of all time, left an indelible mark on her. Brass is the metal that best represents the speed of its conquests and the lasting influence of its civilization. The Greco-Macedonian monarchy lasted 185 years, from 331 to 146 before Christ. Question: A. Who plays a leading role in the formation of the Third Universal Empire? Question: B. Name this empire and indicate its duration. Romans, Fourth Universal Empire. And the prophet continues: There will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, just as iron breaks and breaks all, it will break and break everything, like iron that tears everything apart. The iron legs of the statue, legs because the Roman Empire ended split or divided into the East and West provinces, Constantinople and Rome, symbolize the Roman power which, in a few centuries, through its political intrigues and its iron ruthless discipline, achieved world domination. Under Trajan, Rome governed states covering an area of 2,880,000 square kilometers. Its remarkable organization could make believe that it would always remain. However, as of the 2nd century of our era, the first signs of weakening were to appear, which were going to become more and more accentuated until the fall, which occurred in the 5th century under the invincible push of the barbarians. The Roman monarchy had lasted 622 years, from 146 BC to 476 AD. Question: Name the Fourth Universal Empire and indicate its duration. 8. The feet of iron and clay. The deposition of Romulus Augustulus, the last Roman emperor, by Odoacer, king of the Herulls, marked the end of the last universal empire of terrestrial origin. The fact that the statue does not contain a fifth metal indicates that there will be no fifth universal terrestrial empire. However, a new element is introduced, clay, which is mixed with iron. The prophet Daniel explains this peculiarity as follows: As you saw the feet and toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, this kingdom, the kingdom symbolized by iron, therefore Rome, which will be fragmented, will be divided, but there will be in it something of the power of iron, because you have seen iron mixed with clay. And as the toes were partly of iron and partly of clay, this kingdom will be partly strong and partly weak. You have seen iron mixed with clay, because they will mix by human alliances, but they will not be united to each other, just as iron does not unite with clay. Question: What did you know about the composition of the feet of the statue? 9. The 10 Kingdoms. The mixture of iron and clay indicates that the Roman monarchy must not disappear entirely, that it must survive itself in some way, but in a divided, fragmented form, in the various states which will be established on its territory: the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Herulls, the Lombards, the Franks, the Burgundians, the Germans, the Saxons, the Suevi, the Vandals, 10 tribes in all, like the number of toes. 7 of the 10 barbarian kingdoms have survived to the present day under different names and with different fortunes, strength alternating with weakness, or these two elements sometimes coexisting in the same state. Note: Daniel 7:8, I considered the horns, and, behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and, behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. Vandals, Visigoths, and Ostrogoths were defeated by Rome. The end of the Roman Empire ushered in an era of confusion, a kind of chaos, where unity will now be impossible, where all dreams of homogeneity will crumble one after the other, with Charlemagne, Otho I the Grand, Frederick Barbarous, Charles V, Louis XIV, Napoleon I, or closer to us William II and Hitler. Neither military force, nor human alliances, between reigning houses, under the Habsburgs, the Bourbons, the Hohenzollerns for example, will create unity between iron and clay, will not create a 5th universal terrestrial empire. The prophecy has spoken, and no human power will prevail against it. Question A. What does this mixture of iron and clay mean? Question B. List some names of men who sought to establish a new universal empire. 10. The kingdom of Jesus Christ. The small stone that strikes the statue and pulverizes the elements deflects a large mountain and fills the earth. It is this small stone who represents the next, the 5th universal empire, which will last forever because it is based on love and justice and governed by Jesus Christ, the King of Kings. Human beings have been living in the phase of their history for 15 centuries, represented by the statue's feet of iron and clay. Is this period not going to end soon? The predictions discussed in our next lesson will tell us. Let us remember Daniel's conclusion on the king's dream. The dream is real, and its explanation is certain. Question A. What does the small stone that becomes a large mountain represent? Question B. What are the foundations of this kingdom and how long should it last?